Check out today's episode of the Mindful Drinking Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Brown. We're going to talk about mindful gathering spaces, hospitality, social infrastructure, and how to make an incredible orgeat lemonade. So, like, subscribe, and comment, and otherwise enjoy the show.
You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast with Derek Brown on the NASM Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, where we talk about tips and information that you can use to drink more mindfully. I'm the host, Derek Brown. And today I want to talk about the fact that we need more mindful spaces, especially bars in this world, that we need spaces, whether it's your home bar cart and you're entertaining at home, or it's hospitality spaces, restaurants, bars, hotels, and how those can lend to the social architecture. But before I even get there, I just want to start with a simple story about a friend of mine and a cocktail that I made. So it was about 15 years ago, and I worked at a bar in Washington, D.C. called The Gibson. It was a cocktail bar. It was owned by the Hilton brothers. One of those brothers, Eric Hilton, is a famous musician from Thievery Corporation. And it was a really, really cool bar. And we served incredibly delicious, classic, very classic cocktails like old fashions, Manhattans, Martinez, stuff like that. And to be honest with you, they're a little strong, a little boozy, you know. And in walks this person and asks me for a non-alcoholic drink. It's more common today. That's totally common. Like if you go into a bar, even a cocktail bar, and you order a non-alcoholic drink, you can expect that somebody has something already planned or thought out for you. Maybe they have a ready-to-drink cocktail, right? Those are some of those canned cocktails, but they have something at the very least, like a Heineken Zero. But back then, it was pretty uncommon, and you might be lucky if you found like one malty, sweet, non-alcoholic beer at the back of the lowboy. That's the fridge behind the bar. And so this person came in, asked for a non-alcoholic drink, and I was ready. I had one. In fact, I had been reading Jerry Thomas, who we affectionately refer to as the professor. He's the first bartender to write a bartender's guide in 1860s. And I had been reading his book, which is called The Bon Vivant's Guide, or How to Mix Drinks. And in it, he had a section that was referred to as temperance drinks, which back then, that was the word that they used for what today we'd call mindful drinking. It's slightly different, but more or less the same thing. And so he had about 10 cocktails that were non-alcoholic in there, including one that I had just learned called the orgeat lemonade. So I was actually really excited when this person asked for it. And I proceeded to build the cocktail. It's very simple. You get orgeat, which is orgeat. It's a French word. Basically, it's an almond syrup. And this orgeat, you would add, in fact, if you know famous cocktails like the Mai Tai, it's in that. But orgeat, you add fresh lemon juice, crushed ice, mint, and a little bit of powdered sugar on top of it. And it was a beautiful drink, and it was a delicious drink. And I served it to her, and she was pretty satisfied. And I was pretty happy that I had that in the arsenal. And one of the reasons for that, and one of the reasons that I had that in my pocket already, to use another metaphor, is that I was essentially recognizing then, as I recognize now, that bars are part of our social infrastructure. Right? They're where we go to connect with other people, to create community, to make meaning. All of those things are really important for it. And in a way, the cocktail isn't really the point. Cocktails are props. The point is the relationships and the people that are in your bar. And so I knew that, right? I mean, let me just dial it back one step and say, if you just want alcohol, if you just want a cocktail, that's easy. You just make it in your home. right? But if you want to go meet people, if you want to take a friend to a drink, if you want to have an enjoyable conversation, chances are you're going to go to a bar, restaurant, hotel, hospitality space. And so that's what I mean about it being the social infrastructure. And food and drink, in a way, is a social technology, right? We don't go just for those items, although I suppose sometimes you do if you're a connoisseur or a gourmand, I get it. But most of us go there because we're trying to connect with somebody else, whether it's somebody we know or somebody we have yet to meet. And so food and drink in that sense becomes a piece of the social technology we use to do that. And the essence of that is hospitality, right? Hospitality is a word that essentially means taking care of other people. And I'm gonna dive into a little philosophical aspects of hospitality. So bear with me. I'm gonna get back to non-alcoholic drinks and mindful drinking in just a minute. But I just want to share that hospitality to me is not just a industry or a word. It is essentially an ethical construct. And what I mean by that is that we use hospitality to take care of other people, and often people we don't know. That's part of the point of it. And a big part of that is being inclusive. And so, listen, I know for those of you who are very political, these words sometimes have different meanings and get caught up in debates. Let's put that aside for a second, okay? Let's just think of inclusivity in this sense as somebody comes to your house, somebody comes to your bar, somebody comes in and they don't drink alcohol. What do you do? Back then, 15 years ago, it would have been more common to just be like, oh, we don't have anything. Or to say, we don't really care about that in much more colorful terms, to be honest with you. But we don't care about that. And even if we do make something, you're going to see that we don't care about it because it's going to be sweet and syrupy and disgusting. Sometimes it's just going to be pineapple juice from a can and grenadine. Enjoy. So hospitality, I think, dictates that we are inclusive in the sense that somebody who comes in, that we welcome them in, right? And again, there's lots of deeper philosophical insights from this. If you want to go read Immanuel Kant or Derrida or whatever, I'm not going to get into that. That's not really the purpose of this show. There are other much better philosophical podcasts. But I do want to just share that because, and let me just put it in this way. The importance of hospitality is that that's how we're brought into the world. You were brought into the world by an act of hospitality. You were welcomed into this world. You were a stranger of sorts in the sense that you did not know the people who were providing food, shelter, connection, all of those things. You were welcomed in this world, and it helped you to grow and learn and prosper. And so it's almost in a way built into our DNA to be hospitable to other people. If we really let it happen, we know that there's been so many instances where we've been, met somebody and we offer them that and we can make an incredible connection through that. And so I think that's really important. Now, when I say it's built into DNA, I think it's literally built into my DNA because my grandmother, an Italian grandmother, I called her Nani. Sometimes in Italians call their grandmother Nonna, so that's not dissimilar. But whenever I would come to her house, she lived in 16th Street in Washington, D.C. at the Rittenhouse. It was a hotel. It was an apartment building. And I lived just outside of the district, and I would come to visit her on the weekends sometimes. And as soon as I walked through the door, there was a spread of food on the table. Now, mind you, this is about 45 minutes before we had dinner. But we would have charcuterie, we would have cheese, we would have pickles, olives, bread. There's usually like 3 types of bread. I mean, I don't know, you at my house I had maybe 1 or 2 types of bread, but she had like 3 different types of pumpernickel and all this different stuff. We would even, when I was a kid, we would make these Dagwood sandwiches. For younger people, that means that you would stack the sandwiches on top of each other, right? So an act of hospitality. It was part of my DNA, literally, not just through being born into this world, but coming from an Italian grandmother. Those of you with an Italian grandmother, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And by the way, it happens often in many other cultures too, but that's just the one that I know. And so we exist because of this hospitality from our families, from our friends. And so I think it's really a critical part of what we share. Now, to the point where we have bars, whether they're home bars and we're entertaining at home, the wedding bars where we're entertaining friends and guests, or you own a bar or restaurant and you're trying to serve people out of it. I think that sort of inclusivity, making sure that people have drinks that serve a variety of purposes, some with alcohol, some with low alcohol, some that are non-alcoholic. Because remember, mindful drinking doesn't say don't drink alcohol. It doesn't even say you must drink low alcohol. All I'm suggesting is that you should have optionality for people. So in some cases, that means some people, for whatever reason, aren't drinking. Some people, it's a religious preference. Some people, it's health. Maybe they want to drink alcohol, but they can't because they're on heart medication or something that prevents them from doing that. They're pregnant is another example. For some people, maybe they have a marathon the next morning. I have friends who run marathons. I don't run marathons. I'm sure you know people who run marathons. It's probably hard to get drunk the night before and then run. So avoid that if you can. And so for whatever reason, they're not drinking, offering them the opportunity to socialize and connect with other people and build meaning and all the things that happen within a bar or within your home or within any entertainment venue, I think is really important. There are so many simple ways to do that. You don't just have to do that by making non-alcoholic cocktails, although I, slyly put my book in the background, Mindful Mixology. So if you're watching YouTube right now, you can see it. It's in the background. It's the green title, Mindful Mixology. And you can learn how to make cocktails for that. So that's the end of that plug. But you can also buy ready-to-drink cocktails that are really delicious these days that don't have alcohol. You can buy sparkling tea. So let's say that you don't want any sugar and you're trying to avoid that. There are products with that you can get. There are also, of course, non-alcoholic beers, which I think are quite delicious these days. I mentioned the malty sweet ones that come from 15 years ago. Avoid those. They're terrible. But the ones that they're making today, and there's some very popular ones. Actually, interesting side note is that in terms of subcategories of beer, non-alcoholic beer is becoming this year the second largest category of all beer. Isn't that wild? So some people are taking my advice already, but that is still a drop in the bucket, to be clear, because lager, which is the biggest category of beer, is like 90 something percent. So we're talking about a small percentage, but and it's replacing ale. But that to me shows that there's growth and people are concerned about this, which I think is really cool, because that's what I'm talking about here. So non-alcoholic beer, have a non-alcoholic beer. That's the simplest lift that you can have. If you're a bar or a restaurant, it's easy. In fact, I went to a baseball game, it's minor league baseball game last night, and I asked them for a non-alcoholic beer and they didn't have them. Womp womp. I was so upset because look, when you're at a game, especially in Washington, D.C. in the summer, it's really hot. And a beer is just so refreshing, but I don't drink alcohol normally. So it would have been really lovely to have that. Instead, I had soda water, fine. But it just wasn't the same. So those are some of the simple ways to do it. I think, you don't have to go too complicated, even in the cocktails. Let's say that you're doing a gin and tonic. There is non-alcoholic gins out there, botanical beverages that maybe they're not exactly like a gin with alcohol, but they have a lot of the flavor. You can make a gin and tonic. Everybody out there can make a gin and tonic. It's 1.5 ounces of the base spirit, 4 ounces of the tonic, ice, lime. That's it. So simple. That's also I would have definitely loved to have that at the baseball game last night too, but I digress. All of this, I talked about it being in our DNA. I talked about it being a part of a ethical construct, hospitality, but it also improves our health, right? So literally it increases our lifespan. when we are social and connect with other people. There are lots of data to suggest that there are better health outcomes when you are being social. So hospitality in that sense not only is a ethical construct, it is something that is useful to us on a very base level just to help improve our lives and our wellness and our health and our not just our lifespan, but our health span as well. That's an important distinction. So I'm going to spend 1 minute talking about health span versus lifespan. Health span is the amount of time that you are healthy and able to do things. I know a lot of old people that are not amble. They're not moving around. They're not out there. They want to be, but they can't be. They're stuck to a bed. They're stuck to some kind of walking device. Not, by the way, I'm not suggesting these were caused by alcohol. Or just to clarify that, there's lots of reasons why a person might end up in that situation. But one thing that might help their situation earlier on is by being social. I know it sounds easy. It sounds easy. Go to a bar, have a non-alcoholic drink, talk to a friend, live longer, live better. But the health span is when you are still able to do things, which I think is I want to live to a long age. I know all of you do too. And I also want to be able to do things during that. So hopefully I can keep skateboarding. I skateboard even at the age of 50, but I want to skateboard till I'm 80 at least. Maybe I won't be doing a McTwist, but I will be still rolling. So with that said, I think it improves our social health. And that's a really important part of it. The last thing that I'll talk about is the fact that our society maybe is a little bit troubled now in terms of political animosity, understatement. In terms of the kind of conflicts we have just over the simplest of things, our belief systems, our religious values, our political beliefs, all of these are certainly in a moment of enemy, which just means that they're kind of up in the air. You know, they're people with widely different views. That's what a democracy does. It holds so many different views in a multi-racial, multi-plural society. And look, I mean, it's not easy, right? But I'm suggesting that hospitality can be a cure for that too. That we can use it as a way to connect with other people, and people sometimes we don't know. And that's okay. Look, sometimes we don't want to talk to those people. There are times that there are people that are, maybe had too much to drink, or maybe you're in a totally different frame of mind than we are, and it's really impossible to get through to them. I get that. But most of us live in a world where we want to learn about other people. We want to connect with other people, and that it's built into us to connect and know other people. And so I think in that way, hospitality, inclusivity is a way to open up this door. Because look, you can't be a stranger when you're handing somebody a drink, right? It just feels like an immediate connection, whether that drink is with or without alcohol. And so I think that's a really important part of all of this. When we're talking about mindful spaces, mindful places, maybe more specifically, when we're talking about hospitality venues, when we're talking about your home, when you invite guests into it, I think it's important to have these options for all of the reasons that I stated. And it's not hard. You can do this. I believe in you. With that said, I just want to thank you for listening today to the Mindful Drinking Podcast. As always, we would love to hear from you. And look, this is my last episode. My life has become far too busy right now. Hopefully I can come back to it at some point. But for now, I encourage you to watch some of our past episodes, to check out my book, to learn more about the NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and what they do. They have a wonderful mindful drinking course that I helped create that I think that you will really enjoy. So in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. It's been great to be part of this podcast. And thank you to Eric. Thank you to Rich. Thank you to all the NASM staff for helping me to be a part of this. It's been a true pleasure.